Part 9. Pirate's Bounty Don't Run Away. Author, The Desolate Little Purity. Chapter 81. Tomorrow at noon. Luogu scratched his head when he heard this. The task is a bit tight. When I left the rainy land yesterday, Crocodile had already ordered R2 to disguise himself as the king of Alabasta and put on a good show in front of the rebels. Robin said, since yesterday, the rebels' pace has been unstoppable, heading straight to Albina. Luogu was thoughtful, then looked at Robin, and sighed softly, "Are you taking revenge?" Robin covered his mouth and chuckled, "I already understand. This is not difficult at all." Luogu nodded on the table and took a sip of the black tea in the cup. "If we want to completely quell the conflict between the rebels and the Alabasta regular army, we can only rely on Princess Weiwei. So, she can't be kept under the rain banquet forever. You caught her with your own hands, and because there is a historical text in Albina that contains errors in chapter 71, Robin still doesn't know that the historical text is hidden in the royal cemetery and has been repaired, so you can't take any more detours. Return to the rain land. In this case, you can only rely on me to rescue her." Luogu said, "What is before me now is a state of exhaustion. I cannot prevent the two armies from fighting with my own energy. This is not the job of a pirate hunter. Therefore, rescue this princess and go taking care of the sand crocodile in Albina is what I should do, and preventing the conflict between the rebels and the regular army is what this princess should do. Everything has been calculated well, but you are scheming against me now. How can you? Didn't you say it was just to take revenge on me for plotting against you before?" "Women hold grudges," Robin said, "and if we can't do this, there seems to be no possibility of cooperation between us." "Is it just cooperation?" Luogu sighed softly. "It's really disappointing. There are time bombs following me, especially with your status. How long do you think you can protect me?" Robin stood up. "I understand, and I have said what I need to say. I just didn't expect that you would be able to protect me in the first place. I plan to let go of Crocodile's pigeons and go directly to the rainy land. This will greatly weaken your sense of accomplishment and make you feel the urge to go all the way in vain." "It doesn't matter," Luogu said, "there happens to be something good for you to take a look at." "What?" Robin stopped walking and looked back at Luogu. Luogu smiled mysteriously, then walked to the bed and lifted the quilt. Robin raised his eyebrows, and there was a strange look on his face. This guy had lost his mind and gone crazy. Then I saw Luogu pulling out a piece of white cloth from under the quilt, with black text like pictures on it. "This is..." Robin's pupils shrank suddenly. "How is it?" "I'm hiding well," Luogu asked confidently. "Hiding it under the quilt, you figured it out." Robin couldn't help but twitch the corner of his mouth. "I didn't expect you to actually find it. Maybe I'm really the hidden European emperor." Luogu smiled reservedly. The text of history. Robin couldn't wait to come to Luogu, and Luogu waved his hand. "Don't worry, don't forget that there is another piece of Albina. It's all yours, and I can't understand it anyway. Before, I was planning to write to you about this, but suddenly I remembered that we don't have any effective means of communication." "Mean of communication?" Robin said thoughtfully, "If you successfully deal with Crocodile, that unlucky combination may come in handy. You really have the means to suppress it?" "I have invited many people to join the Baroque Working Society over the years," Robin said. "It is not as complicated as you think to make them obedient. The most important thing is, do you think their loyalty to Crocodile is really true? Is it that high?" Luogu felt that it was not very safe. The guy who was an enemy turned into one of his own. If someone is by your side all the time, it's okay to be like Mishita. If you can't fly out of your own palm, you can do anything. But those two animals are hard to tell. Especially if you act as a messenger for two people, there will always be a time when you are out of control, and if something unexpected happens at that time, it is very likely that the hidden things will be exposed. I didn't kill them precisely because I had absolute confidence in this, Robin said, otherwise, you thought I would throw them on your ship like this instead of two corpses. Luogu nodded and said, this matter can be discussed again. I will leave this historical text here for now. Is there any problem? Robin was stunned for a moment, then nodded. It is indeed dangerous to take it to see crocodile. Just understand. Luogu breathed a sigh of relief. I'm afraid you think I don't trust you. In fact, I already have some trust in you now, Robin said, because you didn't ask me why I had to capture the princess since I wanted to save her. Because there is no need to ask about this matter. Luogu rearranged the historical text in his hand and said, I can understand why on my knees. First, if you don't catch Wai Wei, crocodile will not trust you. Well, to be precise, this will be nonsense. Drop the last fig leaf, so that you can no longer maintain even the superficial peace, and eventually you will miss the text of history. Secondly, even if you don't arrest, the people in the Baroque working group are not dead. Can't others take action? The difference is that Wai Wei will still be alive if you do it, but it's hard to tell for others. Robin looked at Luogu, his eyes flashed, and suddenly smiled. What a scary guy. However, when Luogu hid the text of the history under the quilt again, and showed a satisfied expression, the corner of Robin's mouth twitched uncontrollably. Should this guy be called smart or an idiot? Sometimes, it's so smart that it's scary. But sometimes, it's so childish and ridiculous. He shook his head and turned around. I'm leaving first. No. Luogu waved his hand, but saw that Robin stopped at the door, looked back at Luogu with murmured lips, but turned around and left without saying a word. After getting off Luogu's big boat and speeding along the Centura River, Robin supported his chin with one hand, but couldn't help but said to himself, since you can see through everything so easily, then when Her Royal Highness the Princess left your ship, didn't you think about this possibility? If you had thought about this possibility and let it go, then what was your real purpose in going to the rainy land? Robin shuddered violently. Thinking about it carefully, Crocodile called Rogu and clearly told him to meet in Albina. What is Luogu's real purpose in going to Rain Land? In other words, is there any reason why he must go to the rainy land instead of Albina now? How could someone calculate this to such an extent? What's the point? Robin shook his head fiercely. I'm not trying to scare myself. Pirate's bounty, don't run away. Author, The Desolate Little Purity. Chapter 82. Time is tight and the task is urgent. Luogu didn't mean to hurry. He should drink tea, sleep, and after waking up, he had to have a good meal. When the big ship stopped and disembarked from the rainy port, it was just after 8 o'clock in the morning. As far as the eye can see, there is no chaos as imagined. Is the main chaos in Alabaster reflected in Albina? Luogu looked in the direction of Albina, touched his chin, and then led Makita towards Yuyan. Dashki is still watching the boat. Thinking about it carefully, since this girl set foot on this ship, it seems that she hasn't come down yet. There were not many people to be seen on the pier, and even if they saw a few occasionally, they still looked flustered. Obviously, the matter between Albina and the rebels has caused panic here. Luogu didn't care much about these people. Makita flew into the midair, and soon locked on the location of Yuyan, and led Luogu without any detours, and went straight to Yuyan. As the largest casino in the rainy land, today's rain banquet also seemed quite quiet. Perhaps it was the reason that most of the Baroque works power had been transferred to Albina, and there were not many people guarding it. Naturally, these people couldn't stop Luogu and Makita. After taking care of it, the two arrived at the rain banquet hall smoothly. What to do next? Makita looked at Luogu. She only knew that Luogu was coming to the rain banquet, but she didn't know the specific purpose after coming. Crocodile called Rogu and said that he would meet in Albina, but Rogu turned a blind eye to it. He spent a lot of time gambling on his luck on the way to Yuba and got a piece of historical text. At this time, he did not go to Albina to find Crocodile, but came to the rain banquet. Although Makita, as a crew member, does not intend to deny any of Rogu's decisions, she still feels confused. Rogu didn't mean to be confused at all, and he took Makita through the rain banquet with ease, and his posture was calm and indulgent, as if he had entered his own back garden. However, after going around in circles like this, a moment later, a secret door opened in an office. Mishita was dumbfounded. Why could her captain find such a secret place? Could it be that he is Crocodile? Mishita's imagination suddenly opened up, and Rogu had already gotten into the secret door. This is an underwater passage, and Makita was already taken aback after only taking 2 steps. A huge crocodile's head was leaning against the glass passage, and a pair of bloodthirsty eyes were looking at her. Ship captain. Mishita shivered and grabbed Rogu's sleeve here. Rogu smiled and said, "Sand crocodile, it's normal to raise a few crocodiles to relieve loneliness and have them as snacks. It's abnormal to treat banana crocodile as a snack, right?" Mishita looked at Rogu with a different look. Rogu said, "Let's catch 2 of these banana crocodiles and bring them to the boat to taste them. To be honest, this is also the second purpose of my coming here." "What about the first purpose?" "You'll find out soon enough." Walking along the passage to the end, there is another door. Twist the handle, push it casually, and the door opens. "Sure enough, we should develop a good habit of closing the door," Rogu said to Mishita. "You have to remember it too." "Why do I have to struggle with such polite issues in a place like this?" Mishita burst into tears. Could it be that explaining these things in the enemy's base camp would be impressive? "Anyone there?" Rogu whistled and walked into the office. "Who?" a voice came immediately. Mishita was shocked. There is really someone. In the next second, the woman was ready to fight. "But I saw the dark room suddenly light up like daylight. Is it a sneak attack?" Mishita's figure flew into the air, using an umbrella to block the dazzling light in front of her eyes. When she lowered her head, she saw Rogu standing in front of the light switch, looking at her helplessly. "Calm down, don't be surprised." Oh, Mishita flew silently from mid-air to behind Rogu, embarrassed to speak. But when he poked his head behind Rogu, before he saw anyone, he heard a surprised voice saying, "Why are you here, Nalas Rogu?" "Long time no see." Rogu waved to the person in the iron cage not far away. The 2 people in the iron cage also stood up. The guard captain Akaram, whose hair was full of curls, waved excitedly. "It's been a long time since we last saw each other. It's strange that we separated just yesterday." Rogu thought about it carefully, and it seems that this is indeed the case. Then he smiled slightly and said, "You guys are pretty awesome too. We just met yesterday and you were arrested today." Ikaram's old face was flushed. This time he really stumbled. He didn't expect that every step after disembarking would be under the supervision of Baroque works. "Being easily caught by that woman, I thought I was going to die, but I didn't expect that the other party didn't have the idea of killing me, but locked me and the princess here." As he spoke, Rogu had already arrived in front of the cage, but he heard Wai Wei add in a low voice, "We didn't meet yesterday. We were arrested today after we separated yesterday." He was arrested not long after. Hearing this, Rogu felt a little helpless. Speaking of which, Robin had indeed done a lot in the limited time. After separating from Wai Wei and the others, he received a call from Crocodile. And Robin at that time should be right here. Then she rushed from here to catch these 2 people, and kindly sent them here to be imprisoned. Who knows what else was done during the process? Anyway, from this series of events, Rogu deeply understood the fact that Alabasta is indeed a small country. According to the weather forecast, it's probably going to rain across the country today. In such a small country, some towns have good weather and some towns are suffering from drought. If this does not arouse vigilance, there is indeed no reason. Then he waved his hand and said, "Get out of the way." He stretched out his hand and pressed on the black pill, as if about to split. Akaram subconsciously pulled Wei out of the way, but still couldn't help but said, "Useless AA, since I was locked up here yesterday, I have tried various methods, but this cage is so hard that it cannot be broken open." As soon as he finished speaking, he saw a flash of sword light. In an instant, Luogu withdrew the black pill, and with a soft click, Luogu looked at Akaram with a smile. "Ano, it can't be." Akaram was dumbfounded. "Is it really a?" Then I heard Luogu say calmly, "It turns out that it really can't be split." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Pirate's Bounty, Don't Run Away. Author, The Desolate Little Purity. Chapter 83. That is to say, he was locked in a prison cell, otherwise, Akalam would have the heart to eat Luogu raw. "You can't do it, why are you trying to look calm and collected?" "It's difficult." Luogu scratched his head, looked at the cage, and then at the door of the office. "How about you feel aggrieved? I will dismantle the door and drag the cage out." Akaram thought about it for a while. Although this is a solution to the problem, it cannot solve the fundamental problem. The two of us are locked in a cage, and even if we get out, we can't do anything. It can't be just parading in the streets, right? "Whatever, let's go out and talk," Rogo said. "How about you look for it here?" Wei said, "Maybe there are keys around." Good idea." Luogu nodded, "Why didn't I think of that?" Then he snapped his fingers and said to Mishita, "Separately search." Mikita agreed, and was about to jump over the cage and go to the other end, but just as she approached, her feet suddenly went limp, and she fell to the ground. "This feels like seafloor stone." Mishita glanced at the cage next to her in surprise. "No wonder it's so hard. The seafloor stone has a special texture, and it has the same power as the sea, which can completely incapacitate devil fruit users. In comparison, Halashi is more domineering than the ocean. More importantly, the hardness of this thing is no less than that of diamonds." After Mishita struggled to move away, she regained some strength, and then said to Rogu, "Captain, this thing must be taken away and found by a craftsman, disassembled, and then installed in the prison on our ship. It can be effectively suppress pirates with devil fruits." Luogu smiled gratifiedly. Although coming here to get this cage made of halustone was his first purpose. But Mishita can have such an awareness, which shows that this girl has completely made the hunter's ship her home. And started to think about the future. Such a change is gratifying and something to be proud of, so I don't hold back and say, "Okay, I'll take it away later." Naturally, they searched for the keys separately. Luogu searched by the desk, and Mikita wandered around, apparently without any clue. Akaram coughed and said, "Mr. Luogu, I'm afraid this is just a waste of time. Since the other party is sure to lock us in here, they won't leave the keys around for us to find." Luogu nodded and took out a key from the drawer. "I think this can probably be used." "Mr. Luogu, I don't think every key can open all the locks." Akaram's heart was filled with despair. He felt that a thoughtful woman like Robin would never make such a mistake. Although she might not be able to count on someone coming to save them, the possibility of such an eventuality was definitely snuffed out by her in the cradle. Then I saw Luogu walk up to the cage, put the key in, and with a click, the door opened. Akaram faded on the spot like a rock and actually opened up. "Great." Wei immediately came out of the cage, looked at Luogu and said excitedly, "I'm really, really grateful. I don't even know how to thank you." "Well, yes," Luogu said, "you have a chance to thank me now." "What?" Wei was stunned for a moment, and then asked strangely, "How can I thank you?" "Help us pull this cage out," Luogu said. This thing is quite big. It's a bit difficult for one person to handle. 5 minutes later, the office door was violently dismantled. Akaram was very careful during the process. He was worried that the door might be connected to the surrounding glass passage. Once it was demolished, the passage would collapse, and then here you will be surrounded by water and banana crocodiles. But it turns out that his worries were a bit unnecessary. After tearing down the gate without any risk, Ikaram and Waiwei pulled the cage vigorously. There is another structure on the upper part of the cage, and it can only be moved after it is removed. Luogu was carrying the knife and cheering them on by singing, "Brothers, work harder, hey, 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 hey." The black lines on the foreheads of Waiwei and Ikaram in front are about to fall to the ground. If this guy hadn't reached out to help push him, they would have given up their game despite being saved by this guy just now. As he was walking, he heard a voice behind him stop. Waiwei glanced at Luogu strangely, and found that Luogu's attention was attracted by the rubber crocodile in the water. "Mr. Luogu?" Waiwei asked cautiously, "What happened?" Luogu seemed to have swallowed something, and said with some regret, "It's a pity that I'm in a hurry today. Otherwise, I really want to catch one and try it out." "What do you think the bananas on these guys' heads are like? Are they fruits? Meat? It's bones." Akaram said, I have seen an anatomy illustration of a banana crocodile. The position of the banana is a hard bone. So you can't eat it." Luogu felt a little regretful. Akaram didn't know how to continue. Would a normal person be interested in such a ferocious animal? Banana crocodiles are such scary little creatures. It is said that they can feed on sea kings. How big of a heart does it take to want to taste the saltiness of such things? After the matter is over, I must come over and catch all these guys, skin them and debone them, and then put them on the ship for storage. Luogu made up his mind: the more ferocious the animal, the higher the energy it contains, and the more beneficial it is to temper yourself after eating it. These words made Akaram stunned. Was this the original purpose? Speaking of which, this man went into the water more than once to look for the sea kings. He thought he was just doing it for fun. Unexpectedly, his real purpose was to temper himself. Ikaram looked at Rogu with admiration for a moment. In a blink of an eye, a group of people reached the entrance of the rain banquet dragging the cage. Waiwei looked back at Luogu, hesitated to speak. Luogu looked at the time and said, "Come on board the boat with me. My next stop is Albina. I think that's the place you want to go to most urgently right now." Waiwei beamed with joy, and then pulled the cage harder. Except that Makita couldn't touch Halustone, the three of Luogu worked a little harder and quickly brought the cage back to the boat. However, as soon as the cage was put down, two Dashikis looked at each other seriously. Waiwei rubbed her eyes. "I didn't eat all night, so am I dizzy from hunger?" "Why, I saw two Dashki." Pirate's Bounty, don't run away. Author, The Desolate Little Purity. Chapter 84. You are back. The two Dasaiki spoke to Luogu and the others together. Luogu was very tired for a moment, and sighed with a tired attitude. "I said, what on earth is going on? She's fake." The two Dashiki pointed at each other together, then glared at each other. Mishita was floating high in the air, and now she said, "Look carefully, their clothes are different." "Do you need to look carefully at this?" Luogu didn't want to complain anymore, he could see it at a glance. "Okay." Although Dasaiki is a pretty girl, the problem is that this girl's dress has always been old-fashioned. A featureless half-sleeved shirt and a pair of trousers can be worn all the way from Rogue Town to Alabasta. On the other hand, the other one has, not to mention the two white plush balls on his head. There are two swan heads on both sides of his shoulders. Behind him are small white wings and a pink cloak. Under his feet are a pair of ballerinas. Shoe. Do you really need to look carefully at this? You can't tell the difference unless you are blind. Then everyone turned their attention to Dashki, who was wearing strange clothes. Dashki covered her face shyly. After I woke up this morning, I suddenly felt that my clothes were very uncharacteristic. So I gave full play to my excellent potential as a woman and finally made such a beautiful set of clothes. Look, how do you think of these clothes? Dashki was dumbfounded. Please don't use my face to say such disgusting words, okay? Do you believe the slave family, or do you believe her? Dashki pointed at Dashki. She didn't know how she turned into the slave family, and boarded the ship to plot evil. But I didn't expect the slave family's wit. I just changed my clothes so that everyone can see the difference. You must believe me, right? Everyone except Luogu shook their heads together. It's impossible to believe it. But he heard Luogu slap his hand, so that's it, it's such a coincidence. I didn't expect you, Dashki, to see through the villain's plan in this way. Dashki seemed stunned for a moment. Some people believe such nonsense. Isn't this pirate hunter an idiot? But that's right. If you weren't an idiot, how could you run around on the Grand Line with the name of a pirate hunter? At that moment, he said happily, is it true? Do you want to believe that the slave family is so good? Luogu nodded seriously and waved to her, come here first. It's dangerous to stay there. Just let me take action. It is good. Dashki ran towards Luogu with a smile on her face. Really don't think about it, Wei said to Luogu, there is something wrong with this guy. Luogu shook his head, how can I doubt my companions? That's right, Dashki came to Luogu's side excitedly, grinning ferociously, how can you doubt your companions? After he finished speaking, he stretched out his hand and patted his face gently. Dashki's delicate face suddenly turned into a big man with heavy makeup. Shimail fist hey. Just clenched his fists, and before he could make a move, he felt all the power in his body, like water that had opened a gate, flowing clean in an instant. Before the last sound of "eh" could even be heard, he was already kneeling in front of Luogu, with a confused look on his face. What's going on? What a great gift, yo yo yo, your sister. Luogu rolled his eyes, tied him up and threw him into the cage. It's a cage made of sea stone. Of course you will end up like this if you come here. It turned out to be Halu stone. The man in the cage looked astonished. So, you didn't believe what I said from the very beginning? Only an idiot would believe it. Luogu glanced at him, but you seem to be easy to deceive, so I tried to see if you could come by yourself, and you did. It turned out to be a lie to him. Wei and Daisuke suddenly realized together. Damn it, I was deceived. The man in the cage also let out a sad sigh. He didn't intend to cheat, he just thought it was fun to do so. It turned out that Luogu actually believed it, so he prepared to attack him suddenly after reaching his side. But I didn't expect that all this was Luogu's conspiracy. Not reconciled. Luogu ignored him, glanced at Dashki a little helplessly, and said to Wei, as a princess of a country, I think your IQ development is incompatible with your figure. What do you mean? Wei was confused, but was reminded by Luogu, what time is it now? No, we can't stay here anymore, we must leave as soon as possible. Dashki asked Wei, why are you here? Mishita also fell from mid-air and asked Luogu, Captain, shall we set off now? Let's go. Luogu rubbed his forehead, feeling it hurt, and the surroundings were chattering, as if there were countless ducks chattering. But when the boat sailed, the noises died down. Daisuke still has a lot of questions, but fortunately Wei can answer these questions. Ikaram was very quiet, he didn't practice his voice, and he didn't speak. He just looked in Albina's direction with worry in his eyes. Luogu was very busy, he was busy bringing up all the prisoners below and throwing them into the gabion in Halu. It's just that there is no time to find someone to make Halashi prison, so we throw all the people into the cage and lock the door. Looking again, almost all the senior agents of Baroque works were caught in one fell swoop. To a certain extent, you are reunited now, right? Luogu crouched outside the cage, watching them. These people didn't have much energy to look at Luogu. As prisoners on the Luogu ship, it was very painful for them. The main reason is that there is no food to eat, and every person is hungry and full. In addition, everyone has injuries. During this journey, ISS Golden Week, which was originally in good condition, has become sallow and thin, and the whole person has shrunk. Of course, there are also fat people. Those with devil fruit abilities, although they also lack food and drink, have gained a lot of weight, and even if they hold a handful of flesh on their bodies, they can produce water. Who told them to soak in the sea? But although they are fat, they are probably one step away from death. The wounds on his body had never been treated before, and they were still soaked in sea water. The wounds are basically invisible now. Still alive, it can only be said that their vitality is very strong, which makes Luogu very gratified. You will be free soon, Luogu said. Hang on, come on, I believe you are all strong, at least, stick to it today. Is it a cage made of sea stone? A voice suddenly floated from behind. It sounded like a woman's voice, but the voice was relatively unfamiliar. Luogu turned around and saw a woman with long pink hair standing on the upper deck, leaning against the fence, with a cigarette in her mouth. She was looking at the cage while talking to Luogu. I didn't expect that you could actually. Tina was surprised to get such a thing. Pirate's Bounty, Don't Run Away. Author, The Desolate Little Purity. Chapter 85. Tina. Luogu glanced at this man, then looked around again to make sure that he was not surrounded by the navy, and then said, I thought that if it was you, there should be a navy following you. Tina jumped down from the upper deck, but she didn't get close to Halashi's cage. She is also a devil fruit wielder. This cage is too big, and there are too many sea stones used, so that it will be affected as long as it is close. All devil fruit users should stay away from such things. You know Tina. Tina looked at Luogu from a distance, but Tina doesn't remember you. It's okay, it's not too late to know each other now. Luogu smiled slightly, then, tell me your purpose. Sure enough, it's just like Brother Lester said, he is an unpleasant guy. Tina took out a piece of paper from her pocket. Tina came here to hand this to Sergeant Dashki. It turned out that they didn't come to look for me. Luogu suddenly understood, and then called to Dashki. In fact, there was no need to say hello, there was suddenly someone on board, and Dashki, who was already active on the deck, naturally saw him. Come here at this time, salute, and say hello. Tina said with a serious face. After this period of investigation and evidence collection, as well as the unremitting efforts of Staff Sergeant Dashki, it has been determined that Crocodile is trying to gain national power in Alabasta with despicable and intolerable means. Hereby, he will be deprived of his title as King Shishibukai, and a reward will be placed on his arrest today. Saying that, he spread out the piece of paper and solemnly handed it to Daisuke. Yes. Dashki straightened her legs and saluted. I will definitely complete the mission. Luogu stretched his neck to see that the piece of paper was nothing more than a certificate to deprive Crocodile of his identity. Issued directly from the Navy headquarters, it is authentic and effective. Okay, the last thing is ready. Luogu nodded with satisfaction. Miss Tina, why don't you stay for a drink? Are you chasing Tina away? Tina suddenly looked at Luogu. Her eyes were still not stern, they could only be said to be serious, but an inexplicable pressure suddenly came over her. Luogu just smiled and said, I don't dare. Tina's eyes flickered slightly, then she nodded and said, Lester is very disappointed that you don't join the Navy. However, it makes Tina very happy. What is this called? Lester was very talented, but he didn't want to suffer. You made him make up his mind. Tina looked at Luogu. This time I came here, Tina brought a message to Lester. What? Luogu was a little confused. Did this idiot forget about the phone bug? Tina thought for a moment and nodded seriously. Tina agrees with your point of view, and what he said was that stupid Luogu is on the Grand Line, waiting to be kicked in your ass by me, above. Luogu opened his mouth and found that Tina's imitation of Lester's tone of voice was very similar, including the expression on Lester's face that made people want to punch him twice when he said these words. They all imitated it perfectly. Then he scratched his head and said, "This guy has indeed gained a lot of courage. I look forward to the day when he comes to the sea." "Do I need to bring these words to him?" Tina asked calmly, but there was an inexplicable teasing in her eyes, as if she wanted to see what would happen in the future. Luogu nodded. "Add a prefix." "What?" "Stupid brother," Luogu said seriously. Tina also thought about it seriously. "He seems to be older than you." Luogu nodded. "That's my younger brother too." Tina did not get entangled with Luogu on this matter. Instead, she said, "My ship is about to enter Alabasta. I will meet them. You can solve what happened in Albina." "No problem." "Okay," Tina said with a smile. "I look forward to meeting you again in the future." Tina is looking forward to it. After finishing speaking, he jumped up and jumped overboard when he turned over. When Luogu and the others came to the side of the ship, they saw a small sailboat with one mast sailing away along the Sandora River at a speed that broke through the waves. Luogu smacked his lips, and suddenly felt that if she was equipped with skulls, the picture would look much better. Turning his head and glanced at Daisuke again, he found that Daisuke's face became much more serious. "It's finally going to start." She looked at Luogu. Luogu glanced at the cage on the deck and said, "What?" Dashki suddenly realized that it had already started. The Baroque working group was almost crippled. It was really too much to talk about starting now. To be serious, there is only one river between Udi and Albina, the Santa Dora River. On one side is the Rhine, on the other side is Albina. It's just that unlike the rainy land, Albina doesn't have a direct port, so boats can only park on the shore. Is it okay? There's no one watching the boat this time. Daisuke came down behind everyone, and looked back at Luogu's pirate hunter. Luogu shook his head. "It's not a big problem. The location itself is remote and does not easily attract the attention of others. Second, the prisoners in the cages were also gagged to prevent them from calling for help. If people discover all of this, Halashi's cage can't be disassembled by anyone. At this level, if they were rescued in the end, Luogu could only sigh, 'This is Stein's, Gates' choice.' Vivi and Ikaram couldn't wait any longer. When we were on the boat before, too, the guy who was pretending to be Daisuke, chatted a lot with Waiwei. Waiwei was planning to collect information, but in the end she found out the shocking truth. At noon. If everything is not stopped before this, then a cannonball that can kill the entire city will bring everything to a halt. It was less than 3 hours before 12 o'clock. It will take about half an hour to get to Albina from here at the fastest speed. In other words, there is only a little more than 2 hours left. At this moment, both of them felt as if a fire was burning in their hearts. Set off. Luogu didn't waste time either. After saying this, he rushed out in an instant, raising dust all over the sky. Everyone behind him was running wildly, only Makita was flying in the sky. While flying, my heart is also very sad. According to the normal script, he should be killing people in the city now. But now, he is floating in the sky, following the new boss, preparing to save the world. Who got the wrong script? Sure enough, anything can happen in this sea. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Pirate's Bounty, Don't Run Away. Author, The Desolate Little Purity. Chapter 86. When Luogu stood in front of Albina, only 10 minutes had passed. Except Mikita, who was in mid-air, the others were still on their way. Dashiki was barely able to keep up with Luogu's footsteps at the beginning, but was quickly thrown away. In comparison, Mishita's flying speed in mid-air was not slow, which made Luogu quite happy. "What's going on inside now?" Rogu asked Mikita above his head. "She flies high, sees far, and can see many things at a glance." In view of this, Luogu decided to equip her with a telescope in the future. The observation tower on the ship can only be considered weak compared to Mishita. It's confusing. Mishita fell from mid-air and stood next to Luogu. The rebels have already invaded, and fighting is happening in the streets and alleys. From the current point of view, Albina's soldiers should be suppressed. Status. But if we want to fully understand the situation, we have to take another look. Luogu shook his head. "It's not necessary. We are not here to stop the war. From entering the Great Route, or after seeing Mikita, Rogu's goal has always been clear, and that is Crocodile. You may have accomplished some of your own goals in the process, but the ultimate goal remains the same. Besides, the princess will be here soon. This is her job. What about us? Let's go somewhere." Rogu smiled. "Albina Royal Palace. At this moment, this place is already a mess. There were people everywhere. A middle-aged man dressed luxuriously, his arms were pierced by iron nails, and he was nailed to the wall. Blood and anger were all over his face, but he couldn't say a word. Crocodile stood there with his back to them, looking down at everything happening in Albina. When he turned around, his face was gloomy, but it was like the solace of his shoes. Didn't come. Not coming. So far, there is still no discovery of Luogu's arrival." Robin, who was standing against the wall, couldn't help but twitch the corner of his mouth, which instantly attracted Crocodile's attention. He glanced at Robin coldly. "Forget it, don't wait." "Oh," Robin said, "I really can't wait any longer. There are more important things now." Crocodile closed his eyes. When he opened them again, all the emotions in his eyes had been restrained. "Start the plan in advance, and many things are not ready." Having said this, he glanced in the direction of the Albina bell tower with some regret, and then walked towards the middle-aged man who was nailed to the wall. "Originally, you might have been rescued." Crocodile took a puff of cigarette and blew the smoke into the other person's face. "But those stupid pirate hunters don't have enough courage. Now, take us to the hiding place, the place where history is written. Otherwise, not only you and your country, but your daughter will definitely not survive today." Robin stood beside him and looked at the middle-aged man and smiled. The middle-aged man closed his eyes. "Is that the end?" "I understand, the text of history. I will take you there." When he opened his eyes again, his eyes were calm, but his consciousness was hidden. Robin freed him from the wall, supported him, and the three of them went around from Wang Gong's side and went straight to the royal cemetery. After a while, they had arrived. The middle-aged man opened the secret door, and Crocodile rushed in first, but Robin looked around solemnly, but did not find the figure. "You really didn't come?" Robin sighed, and looked down at the entrance of the black hole. His eyes glowed again. "Take the middle-aged people and step into it." Crocodile did not go far. Who knows if there will be any traps in the royal cemetery? Seeing that the goal is about to be achieved, if for this kind of thing, the result falls short, it will definitely not be worth the loss. Following the middle-aged man's instructions, he opened the secret doors along the way and finally came to a huge space. It is a corridor-shaped space with stone pillars on both sides. Directly in front of it is a square stone with strange characters arranged neatly. "Goo ha ha ha." Crocodile looked at this piece of historical text and laughed wildly. "Historical text, this is the historical text, I finally got it, ha ha ha, is all Sunday. Understood. Robin found a place to put the middle-aged man down, let him sit on the ground, and then came to the historical text. What's written on it? Well, Kahira conquered Alabasta. This was the year 239 of the Hanian calendar. In 260, Peter was ruled by Duma because of his imperial dynasty. In 306, Elmer completed the construction of the great cathedral. Robin was watching and talking, but Crocodile's expression was getting impatient and he roared, "Shut up, what I want to hear is not the history of Alabasta, what I want to hear is Pluto. Legendary, is it the most evil battleship in history?" A voice suddenly came from behind, and Crocodile turned around suddenly, and saw a young man walking slowly with a knife on his shoulder. As he walked, he smiled, and said, "It seems that there is no record of what you are talking about in this historical text. Norothrago." Crocodile recognized Rogu's identity in an instant, not only because he had seen Rogu's photo before, but more importantly, Makita was floating behind him like a ghost. He raised his eyebrows slightly. "It seems that my dog is well taken care of by you." Makita was still afraid when she saw Crocodile, but after hearing this, her face turned dark. He didn't dare to refute, but he lowered his head, looked at his captain, and then silently encouraged Luogu in his heart, "Come on, Captain, kill this middle-aged greasy uncle." Luogu smiled, turned to look at the middle-aged man, and said with a smile, "Waiwei and Akaram will be here soon, and they will calm down the chaos outside. However, they don't know who can destroy the Albina bomb was hidden in the bell tower. As a time traveler, the biggest advantage is that you can use this identity to pretend to be aggressive." Luogu is very familiar with this aspect. Unexpectedly, as soon as these words were spoken, Robin was stunned for a moment, and then said, "What you are talking about is just a plan. Because that thing is so important, only by transporting it before launching the plan can it be ensured, but this time the plan suddenly advanced, and I was not prepared for this. Moreover, the only people who know about this matter are me and Crocodile." "Why do you know? And, how do you know that thing will be hidden?" "I don't even know about this in the bell tower." After finishing speaking, he glanced at Crocodile's face and said, "Besides, you seem to be right. Pirate's bounty don't run away." Author, The Desolate Little Purity. Chapter 87. The atmosphere was suddenly quiet. Everyone was looking at Rogu, even Makita, who was hiding behind him. In fact, if he hadn't known that Luogu was indeed not a devil fruit user, Makita would have doubted whether he had eaten a devil fruit with prophecy abilities. Luogu rubbed his nose. How to explain this? He is well aware of the civil strife in Alabasta. And R2 had said this before on the ship, so it was not without reason for Luogu to be so steadfast at this moment. Unexpectedly, I originally planned to show off, but ended up becoming the prophecy emperor. Most importantly, the prophecy fails. Luogu felt very tired, especially when he saw everyone staring at him, seemingly wanting him to give an explanation. He became even more tired. Then he pulled out the black pill and said to Crocodile, "I am here to punish you on behalf of the moon." After the voice fell, Crocodile was not given time to speak. The blade flashed, and Crocodile had already passed by. The blade returned to its sheath, accompanied by a soft click and Luogu's faint voice, "Len Yu Yishi." Crocodile's body was suddenly split into two, and his expression was solemn as he was searching for the truth. He was still waiting for Luogu's answer, but he didn't expect Luogu to say the moon will destroy you, and he immediately took action. When Rogu turned his head to look at Crocodile, he found that his cut body was emitting sand. The sands intersected and merged with each other, and Crocodile's body was also reassembled. Then the former King Shichibukai turned around and glared at Luogu. "You are not going to explain it?" Robin also nodded beside him. Although he didn't speak, he obviously wanted an explanation. Luogu rolled his eyes. "Do I need to explain to you?" Mishita nodded repeatedly, feeling that the captain's words made sense. Everyone was an enemy, and we were not here to hold a seminar. There was nothing to explain. If you like to explain so much, don't be a pirate if you have the ability, and don't be the king of the Shishibukai. Become a scientist. Searching for the truth of the world and explaining the formation of all things is no better than being a pirate. Crocodile didn't get up in one breath, almost breathlessly pumped it, and he laughed at Guru, ha ha ha. Well, it has not been so angry that Narasro has been paid for it for this time. Luogu looked at him with some embarrassment. The ability of the shasha fruit is indeed quite troublesome. It is a natural devil fruit. Without some means, there is really nothing you can do. So, you have no means to win at all, Robin said. The historical text has been seen, and she has already said that there is no content about Pluto, and Crocodile will never let herself go on like this. Therefore, at this moment, it is basically a turn of events, and there is no pressure at all from what Robin said. Luogu shook his head. Of course not, I have thought of 3 ways. Crocodile's expression could no longer be described as angry. ISS, you have indeed betrayed me all Sunday. Robin ignored him and asked Luogu, what can I do? First, water. Luogu said, the shasha fruit, as a natural devil fruit, has the same advantages and disadvantages. Once the sand touches water, it will solidify. The body in this elemental state will also be hit, broken, and chopped. What about the water? Robin asked. I always feel that it is too mentally retarded to go out and find someone to fight with a big bucket of water on my back, so I refuse. Rogu said. Crocodile laughed loudly. What about the second one? Although it was a smile, there was no joy in it. He looked at it with cold eyes, seeming to be very curious about what Luogu's 3 methods were. Luogu held out 2 fingers. The second method is that blood and water can have the same effect. Moreover, 2 men fighting with blood dripping are very handsome, aren't they? Crocodile's pupils contracted. This was indeed a solution. He immediately decided not to wait any longer. The sand in his right hand suddenly turned into a sand blade, and he suddenly slashed down the desert sword. Jump! Seeing the sand blade attack, Luogu called out to Robin, and the 2 turned up at the same time and jumped to the main text of history. The sand blade that came suddenly, once touched the huge volume with 4 corners and 4 corners of the main text of history, it immediately died down. It is indeed strong enough, Luogu laughed. I heard that the historical text is carried by these stones that cannot be destroyed in any way, so it can be passed down for so many years without any damage. Now it seems that if someone gets this thing, and if you find a way to cut it and make it into a battle armor, the defensive effect will be very good. Even if it is not made into a battle armor, if it is made into a weapon, it will definitely be a first-class magic weapon. Don't be so whimsical. Whose blood are you going to use? Robin said loudly at the side. Now that Crocodile has taken action, where is the time to talk nonsense? Luogu laughed and said, I don't need anyone's blood. As he finished speaking, he suddenly jumped up and headed straight for Crocodile. Crocodile stopped moving forward, and the sand on his right hand instantly turned into a crescent-shaped sand dune. The sand and dust sweeping down the middle covered most of the space. Robin's face changed. Don't be touched by the sand, it will absorb all the water. In mid-air, the Luogu people turned a deaf ear to Robin's words, closed their eyes slightly, and the moment they opened again, the dark black pill was covered with a layer of darkness on the blade. Armed domineering. The blade slashed down, and the edge of the blade swept across. The sand dunes swept by in an instant were split into 2, and then disappeared into nothingness. Crocodile snorted, stepped back slightly, his right arm hung down, and blood dripped. A little guy from the East China Sea is actually domineering. Crocodile gritted his teeth. He was upset all day today. Although the plan went smoothly, the layout was not complete, and he was already uneasy. In addition, Luogu broke the appointment. The main text of the history was full of nonsense, and there was no information about Pluto at all. This series of things all made his face even more ugly. And now, a little guy from the East China Sea originally invited him to join Baroque works just because of his good potential, but he didn't expect that this guy would come all the way in front of him and be able to hurt him. For the past 4 years, everything has gone according to plan, and there have been very few mishaps. But he didn't expect that all the bad things were lining up to rush up today. For a moment, he was so angry that he said, "I don't care what abilities you have or what background you have. Today, I will decide your fate." Luogu smiled slightly, flicked the blade of the knife, and tilted the tip downwards. "Come. Pirate's bounty, don't run away." Author, The Desolate Little Purity. Chapter 88. With the cold blade in his hand, it was covered with a layer of armed domineering. Luogu's face was calm, but he couldn't hide the excitement in his eyes after all. Since going to sea, Crocodile should be the strongest opponent he has faced. And this is what he has been looking forward to. In the world of pirates, there are monsters everywhere, but Luogu has never encountered them. When he was in Donghai, he thought that Aaron could put pressure on him and become the target of his sword test, but he found out that he was wrong. This pirate who was supposed to come from the New World is not as powerful as imagined. I stayed in Cocoa West Village for too long and slacked off because I had no opponents. Or for other reasons, these are not important. What is important is that Luogu really felt that Aaron fell before he could do anything. Therefore, when R5 and Mishita appeared in front of him, the first thing he thought of was to find a fight with Crocodile. The elemental body of the natural devil fruit is indeed a problem, so Luogu asked Lester about the cultivation method of armed color domineering. Coincidentally, Lester was also training in this area at that time. After talking like this, Luogu successfully mastered the first level of domineering the next day. Armed Haki was also included in the skills, and it cost 4 coins to raise it to level 5. What he did was, of course, have a good fight with Crocodile in an upright manner. "Come." The tip of Luogu's sword tilted downwards, his eyes flashing. Crocodile had seen this look in his eyes, and he immediately understood. "You want to use me as a stepping stone? That's ridiculous. On this sea, there are countless little minions who respond to your thoughts. However, their ultimate dreams can only become nothing more than being stepped on by the strong. You are just a little pirate hunter from the East China Sea. Today, I will let you know what the gap in strength is, and I will give you what you call your dream." Crocodile almost roared. However, Luogu was already impatient. "I'm not here to talk to you about crosstalk. Pay attention." He lowered his figure slightly, and in the next second, Luogu's figure had already rushed out. It was hard to tell whether it was the knife leading the man or the man carrying the knife. In an instant like thunder, there was an explosion on the ground, and Luogu's sword had already reached Crocodile's face. The pupils shrank in an instant, and there was an armed and domineering blade. Even Crocodile dared not take it hard. There is a set of golden hooks on the left hand, the blade has been offset, and he roars, "Bastard!" The huge fist hit Luogu's face directly. With a muffled sound, the punch hit Luogu's face. Under the action of powerful force, Luogu flew upside down. Desert sword. Crocodile didn't think that he could KO the man in front of him with just one punch. His right hand turned into sand, and the huge blade made of sand suddenly shot down, slashing straight along the direction where Luogu's body fell in mid-air. There was a faint hum in the air, and Luogu turned the blade of his right hand and waved it lightly. It seemed that two forces collided in mid-air, and in the next second, Luogu's body was lifted up again. While turning over, his feet temporarily landed on the beams of the roof, as if hanging upside down. Very strong. Luogu rubbed his face, and the light in his eyes was even better than "Then come again. Push your feet hard, and people are like arrows, and you are approaching in an instant. In mid-air, before anyone arrived, the sound of Crazy Moon 131 style was heard. The light of the sword is like the waning moon, and the waning moon is like the violent waves. In an instant, the blades were overwhelming and swept over. Crocodile's eyes flashed, his right arm was deserted, and with a wave of his hand, a pillar next to him was cut off. His arms hugged the stone pillar, and with a roar, he suddenly waved it out. Ding 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 ding. Sparks mixed with gravel began to scatter in all directions the moment the sword light collided with the stone pillar. Bastard thing. Crocodile pushed the stone pillar forward with all his strength while roaring, "Let me see how crazy you are." However, he saw that the stone pillar disappeared quickly at a speed visible to the naked eye, scattered like dust, and fell like gravel. In just an instant, 1/3 of it had disappeared. What? Crocodile frowned, and suddenly he flicked the golden hook in his left hand. There was a ding sound, and what was put on the golden hook was a metal sleeve. After it fell, the golden hook had holes drilled in it, glowing with purple light, which contained, very poisonous, scorpion venom needle. To die in this way, as long as there is a trace of scars, the toxin will invade the body. He pushed the stone pillar with his right hand, and hid the scorpion poison needle in his left hand. He was just waiting for Luogu to smash the stone pillar into pieces in 3 seconds. When the time came, he would use the scorpion poison needle with his left hand, and strike with the desert sword with his right hand. The judgment between lightning and stone fire has been completed, but unexpectedly, the stone pillar in his hand suddenly lightened, then sank, and when he looked up, he saw Luogu holding the black pill, and at some point, he turned over on the stone pillar. The legs are slightly arched, and the blade flashes the arc moon 3 styles. 3 moves in a row, 3 lunar arcs. Crocodile leaned back abruptly, avoiding being headed by the blade, and at the same time, the stone pillar that had been pushing fell to the ground, and his right foot went straight to Luogu's lower abdomen from bottom to top. Luogu tapped his toe and stomped down with one foot, which happened to collide with Crocodile's foot, using his strength to soar into the sky. Shaolin. Seeing that the plan was in vain, Crocodile was also red-eyed. He gathered the storm in his hands and threw it into the air with a wave of his hands. The sandstorm rose at the sight of the wind, and after breaking away from Crocodile's control, it swelled instantly. But in the end, no real sandstorm was formed. This is an underground tomb after all, not the outside world. Otherwise, after this move is thrown out, strong winds will sweep through it, which can evolve on its own and eventually form a storm. Now, although the power is extraordinary, it has not yet reached that level. Luogu held the black pill in one hand and looked down at the approaching sandstorm. He breathed out softly and suddenly the sword flashed. Len Yu style. The edge of the blade is like a moon, a crescent moon flies out in an instant. In the middle of the sky, it disappeared in a flash, intersecting with the sandstorm for an instant, and the sandstorm disappeared in the invisible in just a moment. The crescent moon slanted down, just like the crescent moon in the sky fell into the world, and went straight to Crocodile's embrace. This move seemed slow but actually fast, and he had already reached Crocodile in the blink of an eye. The blade had not arrived yet, and his hair was already scattered. Crocodile's eyes were about to burst, and he put his hands together and said, "He's just a little guy." The feet sank in an instant, the ground collapsed, and the powerful force pushed it back continuously, and the hands tightly held the air blade, and the feet were like plowing the ground. Suddenly, Crocodile's face flashed with confusion, and the next second, the air blade flashed past his body. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Pirate's Bounty, Don't Run Away. Author, The Desolate Little Purity. Chapter 89. It's over. Mishita hid herself behind the pillar, tightly. At this moment, he tilted his head and looked out, still feeling terrified. These two people didn't fight each other for a long time, and they fought quickly, but the battle was really serious. The entire underground tomb is full of broken walls, that is to say, the pillars supporting this place are still there, otherwise they would have collapsed long ago. But this is the case, as far as the eye can see, it is also full of devastation. Moreover, I don't know if it's an illusion, but I always feel like the surroundings are crumbling. It's too early to end. Robin's voice suddenly appeared next to him, and Mishita was so frightened that she almost flew up. When she turned around, she saw that Robin had not only come by himself, but also brought the middle-aged Uncle Weiwei's father, Araba. Stan is the current king. Why are you here? Mishita made a defensive gesture. Robin said, it's safer here. He glanced behind him and said, because it's closer to the exit. Mishita wondered, what do you mean? His Royal Highness, the king, had already tampered when he came in. If I'm not mistaken, this place will collapse soon. Robin glanced at the king. I should say, he is indeed a king. It's done. We are mentally prepared for this, so we are brought here. Uncle King didn't answer this question, he stared fixedly at the two people standing in the center of the hall. Who the hell is he? He murmured, how could he fight to such an extent with Crocodile of the Seven Warlords? The most powerful pirate hunter in the East China Sea in the past 20 years, Robin said. Maybe he will also become the most powerful pirate hunter in the Grand Line in the future. At this time, the most powerful pirate hunter stood on the collapsed wall, looking at Crocodile not far away. Crocodile's eyes seemed a little dull, as if his face had completely stiffened. Moreover, he has maintained this posture for more than 10 seconds. But Luogu had no intention of going over to take a look. He just sighed, it's almost there. It's not as good as it is. Do you understand? Seeing that Crocodile was still motionless, Luogu laughed angrily. To be honest, I didn't come here to talk to you about crosstalk. Likewise, I didn't come here to play with you. You know, the kind of attack just now. Why didn't I use it at first? Because the air blade I shot was not domineering. For a body like yours that can be freely transformed into elements, there is no real killing ability. If one day, I can practice Black the Air Blade, it might really be able to chop you, but now open your eyes and fight hard, otherwise. After saying this, the next second, Luogu's figure had already arrived in front of Crocodile, just prepared to die. Oh! Crocodile's eyes rolled upwards, and the scorpion poison needle in his left hand was instantly released. Have you been seen through? Ridiculous. Luogu moved his wrist a little, opened the door and bowed to the thief. But when the scorpion needle in Crocodile's left hand was about to pierce him, he suddenly withdrew his hand and twisted back. A lock was immediately formed between the wrist and the handle of the knife, and the scorpion poison needle was locked within an inch in an instant. It's ridiculous. Crocodile's right hand suddenly turned into sand, and the condensed sand dune swept towards Luogu with a flick of his hand. What else can you do if you lose this knife? Crescent dune. Once hit by this move, although it will not cause direct damage to the body, it can instantly absorb all the water in the body. In just an instant, Luogu's body was covered in sand. There was a flash of pride in Crocodile's eyes, but at this moment, a black fist penetrated the dune restraints in an instant, and punched Crocodile directly in the face. The fist touched Crocodile's right face. Under the pressure of the huge force, Crocodile's face instantly distorted and deformed. Then, he was crushed by the huge force, and his whole body flew back involuntarily. But he only felt that his left hand tightened, and the scorpion needle in his hand was still not out of Luogu's control. As the two forces pulled against each other, a snapping sound was heard, and the scorpion poison needle in his left hand broke directly. After breaking free from these restraints, Crocodile's body was finally freed, spinning and flying out, and crashed into a wall with a crash. The entire wall sags instantly. The sand dispersed, and Luogu stood on the spot with a dark face. This is not to describe Luogu's bad mood, but it's really dark and his whole person is dark. His skin is covered with a layer of armed domineering. At this scene, even Robin was surprised. When did this guy learn this method? Apparently no one could answer her. Luogu patted the dust on his body and shook his head. All in all, it is indeed a good target for sword testing, but after fighting, it will look grey. Did you think you won? Crocodile's voice sounded, but the sound was a little unclear. When he spoke, his voice was already low, but at this moment, it was as if he had a jujube in his mouth, so vague that people wanted to beat him up again. I saw him struggling to get down from the wall, his right face was swollen, and when he opened his mouth to speak, there was an air leak, and his teeth were knocked out. At this time, while walking, avoiding the falling stones from the top of the head, the self-destruction of the underground chamber has already started, and it will collapse soon. Crocodile looked at Luogu firmly. I said, I will crush all your illusions. Luogu thought for a moment, stretched out his hand and said, wait a minute. Crocodile, who was about to take action, was confused for a moment and looked at Luogu in confusion. Now this place is almost collapsing, so hurry up and finish the work. Do you want to stay here and wait for burial? What are you waiting for at this moment? When did you say that you would crush all my illusions? Luogu said in confusion. Why don't I remember? What the hell is this line? Do you think you are the unfortunate one? Are you crazy? Crocodile was furious. What a mess. This kind of ultimate move is about to be released. In the final battle, can you be more serious? What's the point of saying something like this that no one can understand? With a roar, the sand suddenly turned into sand, and the raging sand tide suddenly rolled over the heavy Shaolin. The whirlwind of dust and sand drove a huge force, and the surrounding walls, stone pillars, everything collided with it, and fell apart the moment it collided. Such turbulent power, mixed with Crocodile's vague roar, rushed straight towards Luogu. Is this a big move? Luogu looked at the rushing wind and sand and smiled softly. If this is the case, then I should also use corresponding means to convince you. The legs are slightly arched, and the black pill is held in the right hand. The posture is similar to the eclipse moon end pose of archery with a bow. Zinuelio's swordsmanship. This is a move that Luogu has never used before. The moment the sound fell, the next second, it was like a black lightning floating in the void. In just an instant, Luogu had disappeared from everyone's sight. Only a series of booming sounds were heard. Crocodile's heavy Shaolin exploded one after another, and at the same time, the figure suddenly flew out, smashing the walls with powerful force, and finally stuck to the stone wall at the edge of the cemetery. But it's still not over. With Crocodile as the center, huge power was scattered on the surrounding walls, squeezing the mountain wall around him in one by one. Crocodile would vomit a mouthful of blood for every gravitational transmission. After the ninth layer of power was completely transferred, he suppressed the mountain wall behind him to create a circular pit. The crocodile was in the pit, his eyes were already white, and he was unconscious. Luogu, on the other hand, appeared in front of Crocodile at this time, shaking his head and sighing. With the blessing of armed domineering and huge power, Eclipse Moon is really almost beyond recognition. This power is so powerful, I didn't even expect it. Pirate's Bounty. Don't run away. Author, The Desolate Little Purity. Chapter 90. After carefully looking at Crocodile's state and confirming that the guy had indeed lost consciousness, Luogu stretched out his hand. Whether to implement arrest. Long lost reminder. Luogu nodded complacently, and chose to confirm. In the next second, the chain was born in the void, and spread to Crocodile's body from all directions, leaving only one head. Successfully captured sand crocodile and received a bounty of 81 million Baileys and 1 black iron coin. Cut. After Luogu saw such a prompt, he couldn't help but curled his lips. Such a big fish. In the end, the only thing he gave was black iron coins. As a Krypton Goldfinger, it's really too stingy. There were footsteps behind me, and I turned around to see Mishita. Captain, are you okay? Mishita looked at Luogu, her eyes filled with light. It's so powerful that I fought against someone like Crocodile, but I wasn't even injured. As soon as he finished speaking, Luogu spat out a mouthful of blood. How did you see that I wasn't injured? Ah, Captain. Mishita was shocked and quickly came to Luogu's side. Why did he suddenly vomit blood? It's an internal injury, Luogu said. There should be no problem, Mishita asked hopefully. Luogu nodded. The internal injuries are not serious, but I was still poisoned. He stretched out his right hand, and there was indeed a scratch on the right hand holding the knife. The blood was purple, which was obviously not a good choice. Although Luogu locked Crocodile's scorpion needle before, he was inevitably injured when he touched it at close range. Makita was dumbfounded, holding her face in her hands, and lost her mind for a moment. Then, a small bottle flew over. Luogu reached out to catch it, and glanced at Robin. Robin said the antidote. Oh, Luogu nodded, and popped off the bottle cap. Mishita quickly said, Captain, this woman cannot be trusted. Luogu nodded again, I understand. Makita was about to breathe a sigh of relief when she saw Rogu gulp and drank the contents of the bottle. Mishita was stunned. Captain. Luogu rubbed her head and said, don't worry, she's already been poisoned. There's no reason to give me another bottle of poison. Makita thought about it carefully, and it seemed to make sense. Get out of here quickly. Luogu reached out and grabbed Crocodile's chain, and then looked at Uncle King, who was being supported by Robin. You are also cruel. This tomb must have been used for many years. That's it, easily ruined. The king shook his head and said nothing. The country is almost gone, so what does a tomb mean? In contrast, what he was more curious about was Luogu's what are you doing? Oh, it's going to collapse. Luogu dragged Mishita and ran outside, saying to Robin, hurry up and follow. After he finished speaking, he disappeared in a flash. The Uncle King was stunned for a moment, then smiled and said, he already knew what I wanted to ask before I even opened my mouth. Everyone, there are always things that you don't want others to know. Robin's faint voice came out. The Uncle King glanced at her. What is recorded in the historical text that you don't want people to know? It should be the information about Pluto that you mentioned. Why don't you tell him? I'm only interested in history, weapons, and so on. From the very beginning, I didn't intend to tell anyone. After the Uncle King was silent for a while, he didn't speak anymore. Robin accelerated, bringing him to the ground quickly. Robin listened intently. It seems, it's over. That princess is still very useful, Luogu said with a smile. It's not bad that it ends like this. Then it's time for me to go. Robin glanced at Luogu and said, goodbye. Really don't think about it. Luogu's voice came from behind. Robin's steps paused slightly, and a smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. Betrayal has become a habit. Therefore, I will definitely feel uncomfortable if I am with a guy like you who is absolutely impossible to betray. After speaking, don't look back, just go away. Luogu was silent for a moment, and then said to Mishita, let's go too. Pulling the chain on Crocodile's body, calling Makita, Rogu was about to leave. Wait. Uncle King quickly said, are you planning to abandon the seriously injured old man and leave unkindly? Luogu looked back at him, then grinned, showing a big smile. Yes. Uncle King, who originally planned to pretend to be pitiful, suddenly became rigid and said, so direct. What's more direct is that Luogu had no intention of staying at all, and disappeared with Makita and Crocodile in a swish, leaving the king's uncle alone and messy in the wind. Running all the way, Makita flew in the sky, and Crocodile dragged on the ground. This is actually very inhumane. If it weren't for the protection of the chains, Crocodile would have to be ground into a blood gourd before he got on his own ship. Even so, Dion's blood spurted wildly, and Dion woke up abruptly from a coma. Looking at the flying environment around him, and looking at Luogu's back, after trying it out, he found that his power was completely useless, so he sighed. Then he got angry and said, "Why is it the hilt?" "Yeah, I'm awake." Luogu turned to look at him and said with a smile, "Of course it's because you are more useful alive than dead." That's right. With the eclipse of the moon, Luogu finally hit Crocodile with the handle of the knife wrapped in armed color and domineering. Otherwise, that blow would not cause such a large force spread, at best it would just tear Crocodile apart instantly. After Crocodile said this, he couldn't say anything. "It's not because I don't have any small emotions in my heart, but mainly because I'm too upset." Hitting the handle of the knife may sound like nothing, but it's actually like a heavy hammer. The huge force crushed the whole body evenly. Although unable to move, Crocodile also knew how many bones had been broken on his body now, and the extent to which his internal organs had been damaged. At this moment, being dragged by Luogu in this way, the anger in his heart has risen to the extreme. Originally, death is the end of the game, losing means final failure, and death is the truth of this world. As a result, I am not dead now, but I am suffering here. Especially after 10 minutes, Luogu closed the door of the cage and clapped his hands with satisfaction. "Baroque work, club, live together." Crocodile sat in the center of the cage with a dark face. Next to him were R1, ISS Two Fingers, R2, R3, ISS Golden Week, R4, ISS Merry Christmas. R5 died, being killed by Makita. ISS Valentine, also known as Mishita, rebelled. Senior agents, catch them all, leaving no one behind. At this time, they were reunited on Luogu's big boat. Luogu looked at it and suddenly felt very sad. It's a pity that the dragon can't be summoned. Fortunately, the family is finally together.